Did you know that in some recent research into employment that about 50% of people who work with jobs live paycheck to paycheck, which for them, and this study found that if in a bind in an emergency, if they needed to, they wouldn't be able to scrape together about $2,000 to cover an emergency cost. About 75% of people who were investigated in this study openly admitted to being completely disengaged at work, which means they're turning up to work every day, just going through the motions, but not enjoying themselves. And the vast majority of them openly admitted that their career isn't where they'd hoped it was and isn't currently serving their life outside of work. That tells me two things. Either people just aren't receiving or aren't asking for career guidance and advice, or the information that they are getting from people in the quote unquote career space is just not hitting the mark, which is why I'd like to take the time here to challenge some of those common ideas that come from the quote unquote career space and put a slightly different spin on them, with the hope that some of these challenging thoughts might just be the unlock for someone like yourself if you'd like to improve your work situation. I'm Jacob, and by day, I run one of the most successful temporary recruitment teams within our niche in Australia. And by night, I do this. I share everything that I've learned over the past 8 years of working in recruitment and employment services to help normal people who just want to improve or need to improve their work situation, in the hope that if I can help just one person, then all of these videos and everything that I do is worth it. There is a lot of work and career advice out there, which is a really, really good thing. And some of it, admittedly, is very, very good. And the more I do this, the more I tend to see. And what I'm seeing is that the vast majority is either far too broad, a few hints, tips, tricks here, or it's super specific into the nitty gritty of CVs or how to answer a very specific interview question with a very specific answer. And I think with how competitive the job market is and the broad nature of what people want to explore for their own lives and the niches that they want to go down, I'm just not sure the advice out there is quite up to par, which is why I just want to take a slightly different stance on a lot of the generic advice that is out there, just to give you a slightly different way to think, with the hope that even just one of these pieces of advice might just rocket your career in the way that you want it to go. I'm going to go through about 8 things, and some of these you'll find pretty surprising, others interesting, others quite conflicting to advice you're going to hear elsewhere. The first thing, it may be a personal gripe, but I just wish it would stop, is for people within this space calling the folks who are applying for jobs or trying to upgrade their work life job seekers or candidates. As part of one of my roles back in the UK, working with a non-profit, I used to go into the job centre and work with young people who were not in employment, education or training. And job seeker is such a job centre label that they put on people, and there's such a stigma around people who are attached in whatever way to the job centre and their services. And I actually think it's quite derogatory, which is probably not meant in that way at all. It just seems very 90s, and the stigma there is that a job seeker typically would be someone who is too lazy to get a job and who is playing the system. So I just want that to stop a little bit. And on the flip side, candidate, why do we keep calling people who are applying for jobs candidates? You know, this isn't BBC Two's Apprentice, and we're not Alan Sugar. They're just people trying to find jobs. There's Joe and there's Alice and all these normal people just out there doing the best. So those two words just need to die a death, I think. CVs, we touched on before. I actually personally think CVs are massively overrated. And this is coming from someone who has reviewed probably 3 to 5 CVs every day for the past 8 years, which I'm not super quick at maths, but it's probably in excess of about 5,000 CVs. Yes, CVs are important. Yes, you have to have them. But the first thing that you look at with somebody when you're trying to help them get a job, or when you are trying to help yourself get a job, your CV is probably one of the last things. It really bugs me that so much emphasis is put on CVs. Your CV should be your final ticket. Imagine it being like you're booking a holiday. You've gone through the process of booking the itinerary, booking the trips, booking the flights, everything like that. Your CV is just the final passport check when you get past security at the airport, for the person behind the counter to vouch and for you to evidence for the fact that you are who you say you are. It's the final ticket. It needs to be contacting employers who you want to work for jobs that you want to do, maintaining that contact, selling yourself, proving to them that you're the right person for the job that they either have or may have, having all of those conversations. And then it's by the way, here's my CV. Here's the black and white. Here's it written down. Here's the reference point, and here are my contact details. That's the CV. The CV isn't the start point. It's not the be all and end of everything. It's something that would come further in the process, just as your final ticket. So I think CVs as a start point for careers and upgrading work life just needs to take a back seat with other things taking priority, like what I've just said. The next thing is that I think that education is a little bit overrated in terms of being a vehicle to obtaining a new job. And this is coming from somebody who invested many years and quite a lot of money into a degree and a master's degree and then several formal qualifications in a previous industry I worked with and this one. From an employer's perspective, education is going to be the last thing that they're going to focus on or look at when they're looking to hire somebody. They're just going to want to meet the person, have a chat with them. From that, they can get a sense of the person, whether they'd be a good fit for the team, for the business. They can start to understand their skills without even looking at their CV. Education is going to be last on their checklist. After meeting the person and getting a feel for them and an understanding of where they're coming from, the work experience is next, which is obviously the key part to make sure that the person has experience and has demonstrated capacity in the space that you're hoping to take them on in. And again, education would fall way by the wayside, just with one maybe final check to check that if they did start a course of education or a degree or something like that, that they stuck to it and didn't flick between, 4 or 5 several different things. That's a bit of a red flag. But other than that, if somebody's got a 2-2 in veterinary science from some random European university and you are hiring them for a corporate job or something completely different, it doesn't matter. Employers are looking for people who are going to stick with them long term and bring the skills and the experience that they need for them. The education is just something that's been ticked off in the past that's not a huge focus. The next thing, which might cop me a bit of flack, is that I don't believe people necessarily need to enjoy their job. Now, I know that's a bit controversial, and by that I mean, ideally, we want people enjoying their job, of course, but in a lot of cases and for a lot of people, employment can be their vehicle to unlocking or improving various other parts of their life. So if the day-to-day of what they're doing in their job doesn't particularly light them up, I don't think that matters as much as people put emphasis on. I would much rather somebody not particularly enjoy their job, but it give them everything they need to fuel and fill the rest of their life than those core hours that they're working at their job. Yes, enjoyment and fulfillment at work is important, and that's going to be the key for someone sticking in a position. But if they're happy to put on their lanyard, to put on their name badge and be the work person between those core hours, if that gives them everything they need outside of work, I don't think that's the worst thing. In a lot of cases, while people are using certain jobs as stepping stones to other things, which means for that specific period, I think it's okay if they were to just get through that job because it's going to take them somewhere far better. The next two are somewhat linked. They're volunteering and then working for your current job outside of core hours. So both essentially are working for free, which I know is, working for free nowadays. People feel very weird about that, but let me explain. I've got a huge soft spot personally for volunteering. It's how my career went from kind of bumbling along, quite frankly, in the fitness industry. I did get to a quite senior position, but I wasn't enjoying it and I wasn't going to get anywhere else. I volunteered in employment services and absolutely loved it. If you want that story, there's on a previous video. Absolutely loved it. I worked for free for 4 months to unlock a career, which then gave me a massive springboard to then future jobs, which were much more fulfilling and gave me much more from work, but also unlocked a lot of things on the personal side as well. I think volunteering is a relatively risk-free activity that somebody could do to propel their career. If you think about it, your boss at your current job is likely to never even find out that you are volunteering if you're just trying a new job, a new industry, a new sector on the side, outside of your core job. No one's really going to have to, no one's really going to have to find out about that. And you can volunteer as little or as much as you like in as many different areas as you like. and use that as a vehicle to try different things. If you're not happy where you are, to find something that would be spot on for you. I think it's massively underrated. I don't think it's talked about as much as it needs to be. And I would encourage you, if you've got even just an inkling of a thought of, I think this industry or this job could be better for me, find a way to volunteer in that sector and go for it. The thought linked to volunteering is working for your current job outside of core hours. And I know there is certain legalities around that in some cases that can't be mandated and people can't be contacted outside of core hours, which I completely am on board with and completely understand. But I think if you want to succeed in your job and if you want to be the best in your job and overtake your peers and your colleagues for promotions and things like that, that you a lot of times have to do a little bit more outside of core hours, whether that's catching up on emails in the evening, whether that's doing a little bit more in your lunch break, a little bit more study or research into how your company works or into the market that you're working in. And the big one for me is taking half an hour before your day starts to make a thorough plan of your day. Now, these are a couple of times that through the day that you're not being paid for, but they just make such a big impact to how your day-to-day goes and the progression that you can make in that job and then over to others. I think you're missing a huge, crucial piece if you're not doing that, particularly on the planning part. The half an hour planning before your job, no matter what you do, even if it's something that's not massively intellectual or potentially needs a lot of planning, if that's what your day-to-day job is, I think it's worth sitting down and making sure that you've dotted the I's and crossed the T's on whatever you're doing through that day anyway. It's going to give you a massive springboard through that day. You're going to walk into work. Other people are going to be unprepared. They're not necessarily going to know what appointments or time sensitive things that they need to attend to are. You're going to know everything. So you can just go bang, bang, bang. And it looks really impressive. I can't recommend it enough. Doing a little bit outside the core hours for free will rocket your career. Next is that if you're unhappy in your current job, don't necessarily move jobs. I think people are very, very quick to jump ship if things aren't going well in their current job, but there's so much that you can do and manipulate with and adapt in your current role that means you don't have to go through the hassle and stress of applying for a new job if you can tweak a couple of things which are going to fill your cup in the way that you want to in your current job. For example, if you're not earning enough in your current job, rather than lose you, the employer that you work for would rather look to give you a boost in pay, or at least put something in place in terms of a timeline of raises or some kind of commissionable incentive in place with you rather than lose you completely. And it's worth having those conversations with them. Can you amend your hours? Can you work more? Can you work less? Can you work flexi hours? Can you have a day off every fortnight, every month? All of those kind of things in terms of your hours. Can you move roles slightly? I really like this idea of if you've got yourself to a point where you're in a leadership position or you're running a team or managing people, could you take a step back from that to get less stress through the day, to enjoy your day-to-day a little bit more, to have slightly less responsibility, to be able to then get a bit more fulfillment or a bit of time back outside of work? Could you do what you do now for the company, but for a different branch that they have in a different location? Could you do what you do in your current job at home? There's so many options without you having to jump ship straight away that you could explore to really maximize your current job that you worked hard to get in the first place before you go through the hassle and stress of applying for a brand new job. The last thought that I want to challenge you on is the 9-to-5 lifestyle, which gets a huge amount of flack, and I don't think that's always justified. So a lot of young people entering the workforce are trying to move away from the 9-to-5 life. A lot of people in the 9-to-5 life are trying to move away from it and start their own business or work flexi hours or work for themselves or work from home, all of these factors. But I think the 9-to-5 life works because it works. Think about it. If you are working 9-to-5 every day, Monday to Friday, there's never going to be a time where you're going to have to miss your kids' soccer game on a Saturday. You'll be able to attend all social events on any evening. You can be present for every bedtime with your baby. That's if you've got kids. It just gives you that structure through the week that you can then strike a balance between work and your home life. Whereas if you're working flexi hours or you're completely remote or you run your own business, you're essentially on at work all the time. And I think people who judge the 9-to-5 life haven't tasted that structure just yet. And the fact that you could, if you want to, just completely switch off at 5 p.m. on a Friday, not pick up things till Monday, I think there's a lot to it. Logistically, it can be a bit of a nightmare in terms of if you want to do shopping and other things like that, which tend to only be open during core work hours. But other than those few downsides, I think the 9 to 5 life works for so many people because it works. So just coming back to the stats I gave you at the top of this video, I just think by doing what the masses do and by following the mass advice, you're going to get the results that the masses get, which clearly could be better. So I hope those few challenging thoughts have changed your perspective in a few ways, and I hope they help. If you are interested, I've popped a couple of links down in the description. I'd love to work with more people on a one-to-one coaching basis. This is what I genuinely love to do, and it gives me so much fulfillment. But if the coaching thing isn't for you, that's absolutely fine. I've put a link to a DIY toolkit, which is your end-to-end guide of getting a new job. So full step-by-step guide, completely self-directed with everything you need to be able to rocket your own career. As usual, over one of my shoulders, I've no idea which, we'll pop another video which YouTube reckons that you'll find really helpful as well. Hopefully it's one of mine, but I'm still fairly new at doing this, so perhaps one day. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.